Hello everyone, Mrs. Wadomski here. I am going to explain to you the parts and function of the sewing machine today so that you can fill in your packet and have a thorough understanding of the parts of the machine. I'm going to show you the parts of the machine as you would be using them to thread the machine. I'm going to do a secondary video about threading the machine. Okay, so we're going to start with the spool pin and cap, which is located right here. You have the cap that goes onto the pin to keep it from falling off of the machine while you're sewing. You put the cap back on to hold the thread in place. Make sure that the thread is going in the correct direction, which I'll go over when you're threading the machine. Okay. Next are our thread guides. The first thread guide is back here. You'll notice that there's notches starting down here. This is where you're going to feed the thread through, and then you place it over this notch to hold it in place so that you can bring it around to the front of the machine. The next thread guide is in the front here. It's on the tension disc for the bobbin winder, which while we're on that, we'll talk about the bobbin winding section of the machine so that you know how to do that. This little disc right here, notice that it comes up, will hold the thread so that you can wind the bobbin. This is not used to thread the machine. So if I'm actually going to be sewing, I would not use this. It's this little indentation right here is what you're going to use. So the thread's just going to rest right lightly in this little thread guide here. Okay. Over here, we have the bobbin winder. This is what you'll use to actually wind the bobbin. Okay, so this is the bobbin winder here. This is used to wind the thread onto the bobbin. The thread tension disc here for winding the tension on the bobbin is used to keep tension so that while you're threading the bobbin, you have the correct amount of pressure on the thread so that it goes onto the bobbin correctly. Next, we have the thread tension control dial, which is located right here. We want it to be in between 4 and 5. That's going to give us the best tension for our thread to sew on the machine. This dial is specifically used to control the tightness or looseness of the thread, and there's some special steps you have to do when you're threading the machine that incorporate this dial in there. Okay, this is the take-up lever. The take-up lever, it takes up the slack in the thread between stitches. This has to be shown through the machine in order to sew correctly. Okay, so we've got this little hole that's in the center there, and you'll see that there's a section that's missing towards going into the machine. This is what actually moves the thread up and down the machine. Okay, so this is very, very important. You need to understand the take-up lever, and that's where the thread has to go, through that little section in the center. Next is your needle clamp, which is located down here. This little dial, this little screw right here is what holds the needle in place on the machine. It's a clamp so that you can remove the needle. So if you needed to take the needle out of the machine for whatever reason, it breaks or there's something wrong with it, or you need to readjust it, or you have to switch for a different machine needle, sometimes you have to do that. We've got to be able to remove the needle from the machine. The needle itself is set up differently than the machine, or excuse me, the hand sewing needle. So this one, you'll see that it has the eye of the needle is next to the point. Next to the point. So the thread actually is going to go through there, which is not the opposite side. This is a nice little setup to hold in the machine. So you want to make sure that it's in the machine correctly. And you really shouldn't take it out unless I give you permission to, because we want to make sure that we're using our machine correctly and that nothing gets broken. The eye of the needle is at the other end, as you can see here. So the thread has to go through that little section. Next is our presser foot, which is this guy right here. He's got 2 little toes. These 2 toes why we call it a foot, just to make it a fun name so it's easy to remember. The presser foot is what actually holds the fabric down against the feed dog while you're stitching. The other important piece with that is your presser foot lifter, which is located on the back of the machine. That lowers and lifts the presser foot so that you can move your fabric off of the machine or keep it in place to sew. Those are two very, very important steps that you need to understand. Next, we have our feed dog system. So I know it's kind of hard to see, but down here we've got these little like grooved pieces. When you're looking at the machine, make sure you check these out. They look like teeth, and that's why we call it the feed dog. This is what actually pushes the fabric through the machine. So this is moving the fabric through the machine during stitching so that it pulls the fabric for you. You don't have to push or pull the fabric. It will move along using the presser foot to hold against the feed dog, and then the feed dog actually moves them through. Okay, this is called the slide plate. Slide plate and the seam guides here. There's a bunch of indentations on this metal plate to help you understand where your seam needs to be. So the seam guide is supposed to guide the fabric along so that you know how much seam allowance you need. Okay, and you should understand that term from your previous sewing tools. The little lines here help you guide your fabric so that you're getting the correct amount of seam allowance on your particular piece, whatever you're making. Next, we have a thread cutter. The thread cutter is actually on the back of the machine. See this little crescent moon section here? This is actually a cutter, so you want to be careful because it is sharp. Okay, but this is what we would use to cut the thread so that we don't have to have a pair of scissors or shears with us. We can just cut the thread using the machine. Next, we have the bobbin case. So under the slide plate, this is the bobbin case. So the bobbin is used here. And when you watch the video of how to thread the machine, I'll show you how to put it in correctly and what to do with this. But this is where the bobbin will be located to actually sew. When you're sewing, you need two threads, and they weave around each other through your fabric, and that's what creates that nice glued piece of fabric together, two pieces of fabric together. So slide plate moves so we can put the bobbin in the bobbin case, which is located right here. Reverse key. Reverse key is located right here. Ours is actually called a push button reverse. So you have to hold it in to reverse on the machine. You can't let it go. It'll return going forward with the machine. So you have to always hold it in when you want to go in reverse. And that's why it's got the little U shape here, the little like U-turn arrow, so that you can know that that's to go backwards in the machine. The reverse key's purpose is to provide either monetary or continuous reverse fabric momentum to lock in your stitches. So this is how you lock your stitches, or how you create like a knot with your stitches. So this is similar to ending your stitch when you're hand sewing. This is what this key does. Next, we have our stitch width, which is located right here. The stitch width is going to determine the width of the stitches. So we have just the straight dashed line, which is the most commonly used sewing, all the way up to a full zigzag, which is going to be determined by your garment that you're making. It depends on what you need, and your pattern would tell you which one to use. We're going to just predominantly use the basic, just a dashed stitch line. We also have our needle position. Needle position is to determine where the needle is going to go. It should be located in the center because we want the needle to be in the center of our machine, but we don't necessarily won't not use the other ones. The pattern may tell you to use different ones. Next, we have our pattern selector, also known as the stitch selector in your packet, controls the type of machine stitch. So the most common is just the dashed line. A zigzag, we could have a dashed line and a zigzag, could be a dashed line zigzag, lots of different things. These are not the technical names. I don't know the technical names, so I apologize, but those are different pattern selections that you could make for the different items that you're making. Last, we have the stitch length control. So this determines the length of the stitches, and it has a little diagram on here to show you. 0 would be really small stitches, which is where we want to be. up to 5, which is very long stitches. So these are going to be very long and would be more for like basting. So if you wanted to be able to take your project apart for whatever reason, or if you need to take it apart, you would want to use 5 so that you can. So part 2 of this video is for the remaining parts of the sewing machine and the functions. We left off with the stitch length control, which determines how far apart the length of the stitches are, and we had 0 being the smallest and 5 being the biggest, which would be usually what you use for basting on the machine. Okay. Next, we have the hand wheel, which is located here. It's this mechanism right here that actually controls the needle. So if you watch as I turn, see how the needle goes up and down? This is controlling the needle. Okay, this is if I have to do some simple stitches, or if I need to end my stitch, making the needle come out of the fabric. That's why I would use the hand wheel. Okay, always turn the hand wheel towards yourself. You're never turning it away from yourself. It's always towards yourself, so that the needle's going in the correct position, and that's also going to affect how the thread goes through the bobbin case to pick up the bobbin thread. Next, we have the hand wheel indent, which is located right here. You push that little indent in so that there is a diagonal inside here. That stops the hand wheel from controlling the needle. So now that I've pushed that indent, see how the needle is not going up and down anymore? What's actually happening when I engage the bobbin winder and I spin, the bobbin winder is actually going to spin and start winding the bobbin. Oh, sorry, I didn't engage it. Now it's going to start winding the bobbin. So that's how I would wind the bobbin. So I have to push the hand wheel indent so that it will wind the bobbin. Okay. Next, we have the power on-off switch located here. So right now it's off. I just turned it off. I would turn it back on so that I can use the machine. I have the power cord plugged into the machine. I also have the rest of the power cord that is plugged into the wall outlet, which I'm going to show you, is down here. We have a outlet in these cabinets that is to plug in the machines. There are a couple of troubleshooting things that you need to do if your machine is not turning on, but I will show you in the next video. Our last piece is the foot pedal / speed control. That's what's going to control the speed of the machine. So that's going to determine how fast the machine will actually sew. So as I push this down, and you would use your foot with this, I'm just going to show you so that you can see with my hand. But when I push this down, as long as my hand wheel release is not engaged, the needle is going to go up and down. So I'm controlling the machine by using the foot control, or the speed. Sometimes we call it the gas pedal because that's what it's similar to for a car. And this is how I'm going to actually sew. Last couple of things. There is a light bulb underneath here that will provide light for while you're sewing. That's important so that you can see the fine stitches that you're doing, or the very detailed space that's working in this little section here. I think I've gone over everything. If you have any questions, you can ask me, but these two videos should incorporate everything that you need to know for the functions of the parts of the machine. The next video is going to show you how to thread the machine correctly.